try to explain how I took an inexpensive doorway dolly I made from the YouTube video that I'm going to now display back here and will give a link to. And I made the dolly steerable. I don't have an exact parts list on this because I just made it as I went along, and it's not that easy. You have to be able to MIG weld, and you have to buy stock and be able to cut, drill, and put bushings in a steering mechanism. Essentially you need some 3/4 inch square stock tubing, 1/2 inch square stock, flat steel 3 inches, some 5/8 threaded rod, 5/8 round axle. What I've done is, using the steel, I've constructed a push bar and a steering bar, which will allow the dolly to be pulled or pushed like a wagon or have upright steering, such as this. I'll put this together in just a minute here and I will show you how it looks. The rear axle, I had to raise it up with 2-inch square tubing and some welding in order to get it high enough to make up for the fact that the front of the dolly is quite a bit higher due to the steering mechanism. So what we'll do now is we'll put the dolly upside down and I'll show you how I put the steering mechanism in it. I constructed the front axle with a 2 by 2 inch steel channel in which holes were bored in the center and at each end. I salvaged the steering knuckles from a garden cart. I used brass bushings inserted into the drilled holes and installed each axle. In the center, I made a plate with 3 holes, one to attach to the steering spindle and basically the steering handlebar, and the other end I have 2 holes for the tie rod ends. The 4 tie rod ends were bought at a lawnmower supply shop. It's a fairly common part, but the tie rods themselves I made out of square steel stock with the threaded rods welded into each end. On the rear side of this 2 by 2 inch channel, I have welded in 2 couplers or spacers that receive the push bar, although the push bar comes in from the opposite side than what I'm showing here. The steering spindle consists of a bolt with a tube welded to one side of it. The bolt comes through the square steel stock, through the bushings, and is attached to the plate to actuate the steering. I use a trailer hitch pin to connect the steering to the steering handlebar on the other side. I welded in a stop at each side to keep the wheels from turning too far. This shows the hitch pin being installed into another steering spindle and into the handlebar. Of course, that will come through from the other side. I'm now installing the rear axle using wing nuts. I'm now installing the center decking. These are the wide decks. They are interchangeable with narrow.
decks. This wider deck or wings gives added room for a camera operator to be riding on the dolly. These wide decks can be interchanged with two narrow decks, which is good if you're using the dolly as an equipment cart. The push bar is being installed and the steering handlebar is being installed to the steering spindle using a hitch pin. There is a pivoting bolt which can be attached to the center of the push bar, which gives you upright steering. I'm installing that at this point. And transitioning to wagon type steering push-pull by detaching the steering arm from the push bar. The deck at the steering end had to be cut to make way for the wheels when they're turned inward. Here I am using a bungee cord to tie a tripod down to the recessed tie-down ring